She's been appointed to provide strategic advice to the Secretary-General on addressing racism and racial discrimination across the UN system, its agencies and entities, and lean on her experience as a key advisor to former President Thabo Mbeki from 1994 to 2008 during the teething years of the country's new democracy.
It's a little concerning that so many years thereafter, the UN Secretariat is still grappling with issues of race. But I think the Secretary General is very brave and courageous to decide that I am going to deal with this matter, because it's a matter that many people don't want to deal with. And fortunately for me, they have recognized that there's a problem. They have done something about it, came up with an action plan about how to address racism. So all I have to do is to make sure that they keep to their word.
A strategic plan adopted in 2022 seeks to address racism within the UN Secretariat, with every entity asked to develop and implement its own action plan, which Gumbi and her team will guide and evaluate.
The first question I asked was, what will success look like to the SG when we say we really have done something?
Let me scratch that question off my list.
And the answer I got was that it is when everyone within the UN feels comfortable enough to talk about racism. And then I said to them, but it has to be something more than that. It can't just be about talking about racism. It must be about changing the culture of the organization. It must be about changing behavior.
And feeling the change, right?
Yeah, and people must feel the change. And then it must be about consequence management.
An introspective look for an organization that positions itself as a champion of progress, equity, and inclusion. What does it say, Advocate Gumbi, more broadly about even how an institution like the United Nations, where real priority, I would argue, is given to racial diversity, to gender equity, to inclusion, that issues of structural and institutional racism still persists here? What does that say about society more broadly, if at the UN that still is the case?
Well, I think the UN is but just a microcosm of society. What happens outside happens here as well. So there's unconscious bias, there's deliberate racist act, there is a systems of power. People are just fighting over positions. There's a system of just othering people, just deciding that these others don't matter. And I think it's a reflection of any other organization. I mean, this is about the UN Secretariat.
Right.
Because that's a machine, that is meant to do something. But if the UN Secretariat gets it right, imagine, Sherwin, that this could apply to governments across the world. Like if we get the systems right, that really deal with racism in an organization, then you can really take that to an organization in Brazil, you can take it to the government in Sudan, you can take it to Barcelona Football Club that is struggling with racist acts from. It can be a model that can be used across the world, but only if we get it right. And it's a big if.
Well, given the UN colors, let's call it a blueprint, shall we? A model that remains a work in progress, but an exercise that could produce international best practice in a world struggling to fully embrace the pillars of inclusivity, equality, justice, and dignity for all. Sherwin Bryceby's SABC News, New York.